All right, so a kind of subtopic within the overall broader topic of personality is we can look at something called personality test, right? So this is a psychological assessment that has been developed to help us better understand someone's personality. Okay, so psychological tests in general have two basic goals. We want to accurately and consistently reflect a specific characteristic, all right? So whether it's an anxiety screener or in this case personality, right? There's something we're focusing on. You know, we want to be accurate about what we're trying to measure, and then whatever we're measuring, we want to be consistent with that accuracy. Okay, and then we're going to use that information to either better understand ourselves as an individual right now, and then potentially even predict future psychological functioning. Right. So, for example, there are numerous studies out there that look at different personality traits and how they relate to things like academic success, workplace success, how people might be in a relationship, so on and so forth, right? So we're taking something that we've measured and we're using that to predict that most likely, based on research, what we can say this person might be like in these different situations. Okay? Now, with personality tests, there are generally two basic broad categories. We have what are called projective tests, and then we have what are called self-report inventories. Okay, so that first one, projective test. Here, the individual is presented with some type of ambiguous situation. It's usually an image that they're asked to interpret. All right, so a very common example here is with the Rorschach ink blot test. All right, so just as an example of that, we can see a person is shown an image similar to this, and then they're asked, what do you see? Like, how would you interpret this? So we want to see, are they focusing on one individual part or trying to make sense of the whole entire whole? Whatever it may be, what is it that you see? Okay. And then supposedly what we're saying is that whatever they do see, their personality is being projected out. Right? And that's how we can start to glean information about who they are and the type of person they are. Okay. One of the strengths that we're seeing here is that oftentimes we might have things that we don't understand about ourselves, things that are very deep down or hidden to us almost, and this helps us kind of capture some of that. Okay. At the same time, it can be highly subjective, right? So we're going to see a lot of variation from person to person, and even like psychologist to psychologist, right? So highly subjective. So accuracy and reliability might be more of a concern. If we compare this to self-report inventories, think about this as taking a test in class, right? And it's just you responding and self-reporting and answering a series of questions, right? And these questions are established and kind of standardized to try, again, gather information about who you are as a person so we can understand what traits you have, okay? So the strength here is that these are like almost like the gold standard because of how objective they can be, and they have more accurate results. Okay. The weakness, though, is that the accuracy of those results depend on the individuals being honest. All right. So one of the things that we see in general with research, when you look at something like a survey, people are likely to be dishonest when it comes to something of a very personal or intimate nature, and that's even if it's completely anonymous. Right. So if we look at something like a personality test, that's not anonymous. It's about you, and it's very personal, right? So there's a tendency there to almost misrepresent who we are. We want to kind of see ourselves in the best light, and we want other people to kind of see that, and so we may not answer appropriately. Now, some of these are built so they can kind of account for that, particularly if you look at something like the MMPI. It's the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. This is, again, kind of the gold standard, what you would want to take. It's a bunch of true-false questions, so it's easy from that standpoint, but it is over like 500 questions, right? It's a lot. And what you may see is that you're going to answer the same question multiple times, but each time it's phrased in a slightly different way, and it's trying to help reduce the dishonesty, right? So even if you lied this one time, we're going to see if we can get you to tell the truth this other time if we're able to say it in a certain way. Okay? So as we go through and do that, gets us very accurate results and helps us kind of break down your personality on that 5-factor model. All right. So again, 5-factor model. Ocean is the word we want to remember. So openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, right? We're going to measure each of those traits individually and see, are we more high or low, kind of more towards the middle in each one? And then collectively, how can we use that to better understand who we are as a person? Okay. Now, personality tests can be beneficial for many. Okay. The consideration or concern that many might have is the cost associated with it. All right. So people who have developed personality tests spend a lot of time and effort to create them. And so often there is a fee in order to use those tests. Right? So an average cost might be, let's say, $50. The problem that we're going to find is that we as a consumer cannot buy those tests individually, or us, we're limited. They're only going to sell them to mental health professionals, right? So you have to go to a psychologist. So a psychologist, they're going to spend $50 to purchase that test, but then they're not going to charge you $50 because they don't make any money. So they're going to charge you for the actual test, but then also their time. The time to administer the test, the time to then interpret the results, and the time to write up and explain the results to you. All right, so in the end, what we're going to typically see is that to take a personality test, it can be maybe around $200 to $300, and I've seen some people even go up to $1,000 or more for the same exact thing. Right, so that might limit many. You're always going to be able to find stuff online that you can do for free. Generally speaking, anything you can do for free, not going to be very accurate. So that's not something we always want to consider. One other way that potentially we could look at assessing someone's personality is just through observations, right? So for example, there are some individuals who are very skilled and talented, and they are trained in a certain way where they can go into your room, and just by looking at your stuff, not even seeing a picture of you, just looking at your stuff, they can determine how old you are within a certain range. They can get your race or ethnicity. They can get your gender, and they can break down your personality on that 5-factor model, right? So kind of the idea is that if we know one thing about a person, we can make a better than chance guess about other things, right? So we can logically infer certain things based on the observations that we've made. So mileage may vary on that, but it's a different approach to personality assessment.